What's up, friends? I'm the Zim. This is the Zim video. Today's going to be a quick video about tips on how to draw better portraits. So let's get started. First off, I think the best tip you can go by is drawing from contrast. So make sure you're picking a good subject, a good drawing. A lot of us are probably drawing our portraits from a reference. So making sure we're picking a good reference. This drawing I have behind me of Herbie Hancock's a pretty good example. I'll put some more on the screen, but basically what we want to do is make sure the lighting is not coming in straight in from their face, so everything's washed out, so all their features are washed out. You want the lighting coming in from the side or some kind of dramatic lighting, especially when it comes to the nose. A lot of us, new artists trying to draw the nose will typically try to draw like if there's no lighting, if there's no dramatic lighting on the nose, we'll try to force the nose to be in there when there's really not. Even in this viewpoint right here, it's like as you're looking at me, you can't really see any nose line in the center. There's some shadows on either side of it, but it's harder to draw lighting that's coming forward than it is to draw lighting coming in from the side. So that's my number one tip, drawing from contrast. Number two, these tips are in no particular order, but the next tip is deciding on whether, you could draw from a grid if you want, or you could use projections, or you could draw for freehand. These days, I've been drawing from a grid. Like this example, this is my starting image, this is my finishing image. It's 24 by 18, this is 8.5 by 11. I've divided my 24 by 18 by 6-inch blocks. So I give myself a really broad grid. I don't like to be hyper realistic with anything, so I don't need a very strict, small grid to draw from. But drawing from a grid is a good way to start so that you can make sure your proportions are all accurate. If you decide to draw freehand, I'd say start with your eyes, the eyes of the figure. Start with the eyes. The shadow, there's usually a shadow underneath where the nostrils are, and then there's usually a shadow around the points of the mouth. If they're smiling especially, you get these good shadows right there. If they're not smiling, you can still kind of grab a little dark spot on the corner of the mouth. So once you triangulate where the eyes are, where the nose shadows are, and where these points on either side of the mouth are, it usually gives you a good sense of where the face is sitting, and then you can start to draw in the rest of it. And around the rest of it is the thing to keep in mind the most when you're drawing from the eye, the corner of the eye, this outer side of the eye, to where the ear starts is usually closer than we believe it is in our minds. When we're drawing portraits especially, but pretty much anything, it's this constant checking in with observation, where it's an act of observation, it's a practice of observation. And are we seeing what we see, or are we seeing essentially what we think? Are we drawing what we see versus drawing what we think? And with the human face, we think a lot of things about it. We think we see where the ears are, where things are, rather than what we're actually seeing. And one of those places that it comes in the most is that position between where the ear starts and where the eye ends, and that distance, that skin distance. Like when you turn your face, there's a lot of skin right there, but when you're looking at it forward, like my finger just fits between the space between my eye and my so it's just reminding your mind that your ears are probably closer to your eyes than you think they are. If you find yourself drawing lines, lots of lines, you might want to check yourself and not do that. Basically there is no lines on the human body, on the human face. There is no lines. So we want to draw from contrast, like I've already said, but we're looking at the objects of the line. We already talked about the nose, and a lot of us tend to try to draw a line for the nose when the line doesn't even exist. It's a gradient of shapes, of tones that will create our lines in a sense. The gradient of tone is it's either really thin or really wide, so keep that in mind. So a couple places, if you find yourself drawing lines, the chin is the one place where people will tend to draw a line. It doesn't exist. The oval, like the almond shapes of the eyes, people will tend to draw a line all the way around the eye. It doesn't exist. There are points on the corners where you can then accentuate with little lines, but you don't need to draw a line. You shouldn't be drawing a line completely around the shape of the eye. The mouth is another place. If you find yourself drawing a line completely around the shape of the mouth, that's something that you don't need to be doing. One of my tips that I do is I draw those corners like I was talking about earlier, and then I just use whatever material I'm using, I smudge it across the lips. So there's no real line that I'm creating. I'm just smudging the broad section of the lips, and then you'll see that it just kind of appears there. And then, so those are some of the main places: the eyes, the lips, the nose. People tend to grab it, the chin line. People tend to want to draw a line for those things when lines don't actually exist. So again, draw from contrast. Look at the shadows. Look at draw the shapes of the shadows first, and then you could draw little detail marks. If there is like a, around the eyelash, there might be a dark spot that it does represent kind of a line type of idea, but it's not going to go all the way around the eye. So keep that in mind. So those are my first initial tips. If you want to hear more of my tips on how to draw portraits, feel free to come back. I draw every Monday, 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. I draw a live stream portrait. I do about 2 hours. This was done on one of those live streams. So come back to the channel, subscribe to the channel. And then also, if you have more questions, hopefully this video will blow up and we'll get a lot of questions, and it'll give me reasons to make more. But if it doesn't, it doesn't. And we'll catch up with you sometime soon. And as always, be loving, kind, and patient. Peace.